Steelers just robbed the NFL as they just added another superstar to their defense in the first round of the NFL draft. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers reports and news about our Pittsburgh Steelers team. Before we get into the latest news, if you guys are not currently subscribed to this channel, click that subscribe button down below. Only 9% of our current viewers are actually currently subscribed. So if you click that subscribe button, we're going to get you guys the daily Pittsburgh Steelers reports, news, analysis, and anything regarding our team. We will get it right to you. Let's get right into the news reports. We just drafted a brand new superstar. So like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers just added a new defensive lineman in Derek Harmon with the 21st overall pick. I like this selection a lot, and I'm so happy that we passed on Shedeur Sanders. As we speak, he still remains, unpicked in the first round. Pittsburgh Steelers were projected to pick him at that 21st overall pick. We had the highest odds to get him. I believe it was at minus 150. We were the favorites to get him, and like the con artist does, he keeps making great moves, and he selects Derek Harmon instead of Shedeur Sanders, and we miss out on nothing because, Shedeur Sanders, he's not a Pittsburgh Steeler. He just would not fit well in our city. He would not fit well with our team, so I'm so happy that we passed up on him, and we are getting Derek Harmon, a dog who will be, a superstar on our defensive line for years to come. He's definitely had his fair share of good games in the past. If you look at his stats, last year he had 5 total sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and he also recorded 45 total tackles with 27 soloed to go along with it. In his junior year, he also had 1.5 sacks with a forced fumble. He had 40 total tackles, and in his sophomore year, he had 2 sacks and 28 total tackles. So obviously in college, this guy played pretty well, and he's going to come into a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that's loaded with first-rounders and veterans that he can learn from. Obviously, we just added a new linebacker, Patrick Queen. Last offseason, as soon as this pick was announced, Patrick Queen posted it right on his story. That just shows what our defense is like. We have welcome guys in with open arms, and hopefully we can teach them upright and, have them fill in for our defensive line. Obviously, in the past, we've had some holes on the defensive line. We have guys like Cam Hayward, who's obviously he's a great starter and he's probably a future Hall of Famer, but he's getting up there in age. So we need somebody to fill in once he decides to retire. We have guys like Keanu Benton, who we selected in the 3rd round out of Wisconsin a few years ago, and he's played pretty well, but obviously he's not shown anything like, too crazy. So adding a guy like Harmon could really change our defense. Adding that first-round talent out of Oregon is going to add another great body to our offensive or defensive line. And, add another pass rusher alongside Cameron Hayward, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, as well as some of those other guys on our defense. I'm so happy about this pick, and I feel like this was the best pick at 21. Like I said, Shedeur Sanders was also there at 21, but we decided to pass on him. Another guy that was there at 21 who I kind of wanted, but he is definitely not projected to be a first-round pick, is Jalen Milroe. That is definitely a guy that we could keep our eyes on and could follow the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe if we decide to trade for a second-round pick, we could be trading George Pickens. We'll have to wait and see. But I am not upset with this pick, and I'm very happy with Derek Harmon. He is a guy that, like I said, can come in and learn from Cameron Hayward and Mike Tomlin. But it really puts up a question, so who's going to be our next quarterback? Aaron Rodgers is a guy that we've talked about all offseason, but picking Derek Harmon really raises the question, who will be our next quarterback? Obviously, 20 years ago today, Aaron Rodgers was passed up on, and he dropped all the way to Green Bay. So I thought he was going to come in and maybe come in with Shedeur and teach him that, obviously dropping in the draft isn't a problem. You can still have a solid NFL career, but, picking Derek Harmon really changes a lot of plans for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I'm very happy that we got this guy, and I think he will be a defensive starter for years to come, and we really needed him, but it really raises the question, like I said, who's going to be our next quarterback? Obviously, we got Mason Rudolph on the roster. We got Skylar Thompson, but there's still 2 other holes on our roster at that quarterback position that really is up in the air, and I do not know what the Pittsburgh Steelers have up their sleeve. Hopefully, we could maybe get back into that second round and pick up a guy like Jalen Milroe or Jackson Dart. But they also may go early in that first or second round to teams like the New York Giants or the New Orleans Saints, who still need quarterbacks. Obviously, Jalen Milroe is going to be a project quarterback. He's definitely got the athleticism and the running ability, but his passing has not been too consistent. But he has played at a powerhouse franchise like Alabama, so that does raise a lot of pros and cons because he's probably facing most of the top talent in the, college football. He's got to play some tough teams, but it also does kind of hurt him because he's got some of the best coaches, some of the best teammates around him, some of the best offensive linemen. So, putting him on a team like the New York Giants, who obviously has a struggling offensive line, struggling head coach, struggling whole franchise, it's going to be tough for him to really develop. So I really like for the Pittsburgh Steelers to possibly make a move and maybe select Jalen Milroe in the second round if we can make a trade. But, we'll have to wait and see, and beggars can't be choosers. So I got to be just happy with what we got. And like I said, Derek Harmon, this guy is a dog. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been linked to him all draft process. I actually made a video on this guy earlier in this offseason. If you guys did not check that video out, check it out now. It is at the Steelers Digest channel. But, if you guys don't agree with this pick, just drop a comment and let me know what you think about Derek Harmon. I believe that he's going to be a defensive starter that we can rely on. He doesn't have any character issues like Shedeur Sanders, or that guy, coming out of Texas, who his coaches definitely said that, he has a problem. There's always been good talk around Harmon, and I'm really happy the Pittsburgh Steelers decided to go on the defensive side of the football for the NFL draft for the first round. On the offensive side of the ball, we definitely made some additions with the addition of DK Metcalf and some other different guys, bringing in the guy from Philly at running back. We definitely got some upgrades on offense, but we definitely did have some holes on defense at the end of last season. The running game, stopping the run, was very tough for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, we did bring a guy like Patrick Queen in, but it starts on both sides of the football up front. So you definitely need a guy on the defensive line that's going to be a dog. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have not had one of those dogs since a guy like Javon Hargrave or Stephon Tuitt alongside Cameron Hayward, because having two defensive tackles that are dominant, man, you're going to be a great defense, and we're missing just one of them. So adding this guy, it's also going to take some pressure off of guys like TJ Watt, who are probably going to have some more favorable matchups on the edge. Obviously TJ Watt gets triple teamed and quadruple teamed, so adding another pass rusher to our defensive line is obviously going to help TJ and get him some free rushing lanes, maybe get him some more sacks, maybe help out Highsmith and Hayward as they look to progress in their careers. These guys are getting older in age, so bringing in a young guy who's hungry could also push them a little bit more and get this defense going once again, build that steel curtain back up. So that is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers. Peace out, boys.